Thanks so much for tuning in. This is an exclusive broadcast, and I have a very special guest that I've invited to join me. His name is Brian G. Barry. He's a prolific author of horror, science fiction, action adventure, and he writes in the style of cult cinema, specifically my favorite of the genre, which is the 80s and the 90s era. He's authored numerous books, including Accursed Ground, Death Commando, The Pale, The Night Mutilator, The Child Eater, and a lot of series titles like Splatter Madness and VHS Trash. Not only is he a writer, but he also owns and operates his own publishing house called Slaughterhouse Press that's released a collection of sword and sorcery stories influenced by weird tales titled Broadswords, Battle Axes, Barbarians, as well as a 1980s action anthology book titled Maximum Firepower. So obviously, Brian Barry is right in the wheelhouse of what we cover here at Paperback Warrior, which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring him on. There's a crazy event that recently happened between Brian and his publisher, Encyclopocalypse Publications, and we're going to get into that, or at least as much as we can, in just a bit. But I want to cover some other things prior to that. So, with that being said, Brian, welcome to Paperback Warrior.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to join me in this conversation. I think I did an okay job in introducing you with just a little background on what type of author you are. But man, you're really hard to pin down for someone unfamiliar with your writing and style. How would you even describe it?
I don't know. I'm a mood writer, and I really take a shine to the 80s horror and I try to capture that with everything I do. I have a lot of ideas and I just want them out of my head and I put them down, and I've had this question before and I really don't know how to answer it. People say, well, I don't know what kind of horror you are, this and that and this, It's like, I don't know, just the stuff that I like to write. I don't know.
Right. Well, it makes sense. But you hit horror really hard with your writing, but you also do action adventure, some science fiction, creature feature type of stuff. Can you drill down to like a particular moment in your life when you became fascinated with this kind of stuff, horror, sci-fi?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Really young. I can't even remember the age, but I maybe six. My mom had Fangoria magazines, and I was all over that. She was completely into horror movies, and it got me into it. My first one I ever saw was Reanimator, and I fell in love with it. I mean, it scared the hell out of me back then.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because oddly enough, my mom got me into horror movies. We were watching WGN cable television one night when I was really young, and Halloween came on, followed by Halloween 2, and we watched both of them, and I was pretty much glued at that point with horror movies.
Yeah, sure.
So, what are some of your favorite films when we talk about cult cinema? Do you have any favorites?
A lot of slashers. I'm a big slasher guy. Slumber Party Massacre, The Burning, The Mutilator. I can go on and on. Silent Night, Deadly Night, Blood Rage, Intruder. I love all those kinds of movies. Creature features I love too. Humanoids from the Deep. I don't know. There's so many, but mostly I like to stick to the 80s and the 90s. I like some of the 70s as well. And I like to mess around with like the 50s and 60s sometimes, usually around October.
Right. Yeah, I like the 80s, 90s, but I like the Hammer horror stuff. I love watching those movies. They're so colorful.
Oh yeah, yeah, they are great movies.
Do you think the old I know we're nostalgic here and we're a little bit older, but do you think the old stuff that we kind of grew up with is better than some of the new stuff in terms of the writing and plots and things like that?
Um, that's a tricky one. Uh, I'm not much into the newer stuff. I will watch some of the things and it does grip me, but a lot of it I just can't. I can't get into it just because I'm so, stuck in that period of the 80s and 90s and I don't know. I like the cheese acting, the bad lines and all. Like I just watched Demon Wind last night and I've seen that movie so many times, and it's so bad but it's so good and I just there's a special spot with that kind of acting and writing. I don't know, something about it. It's very addictive.
It's funny you mentioned Demon Wind. I remember back in the day when we would go to the rental shops. Demon Wind was one of the boxes that always caught my attention because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one that had like the 3D cover, the hologram cover. It really stood out in front of all these other horror boxes. I was like, Demon Wind looks amazing.
Yep. Yep. Oh yeah, beautiful.
And you're right. It's a good movie. It's just kind of a B movie that's great in all the wrong ways, I guess.
Yeah, that's the best way.
Well, in terms of authors, like who do you look up to both in the early days of developing as a writer? Who were some of your inspirations?
Robert Howard. Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith were my biggest ones. And then as I went along, Guy Smith, Tim Curran, Sean Hudson, a little bit of Layman, and just random authors, usually from like Zebra Publishing, all those. Like I just got into those so much, and that's pretty much my area.
Yeah, you hit all the superstars right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah, before we jump into the hot topic, I'm wondering if we could briefly just go through some of your series titles. I've been browsing your Amazon page for a while now, and there's so many books. So if it's okay with you, I just want to go through some of your series titles and just get maybe a short description of what the overall theme is that you're going for, and maybe what you feel is the best book of the series. For example, let's say the slasher back series. You mentioned slashers earlier. So the slasher back series, which, if I'm not mistaken, contains 6 books with titles like Sleepover Massacre, Blood Lanes, Fragments. What's the deal with slasher back series?
It's like my homage to the classic 80s slashers, the trash slashers, just like the movies I mentioned a minute ago. That's pretty much what it is. I try to bring that back into book form.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's funny when I read a lot of 80s and 90s horror and even 70s horror, I don't really get the slasher vibe out of those books. I mean, you get the haunted houses, you get the ghost, you get the evil kids, but there's not just a straight up slasher.
There is one, and it's called Joyride. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
Mm-mm.
I don't know who the author is. I forgot, but that one has heavy slasher vibes, and it was written in the 80s.
Nice. All right, so Joyride is one to look for slasher on page. That sounds good. You have also the VHS Trash series, which is 9 total books. Titles like Ogre, Death Commando, Laundromat, Sharpshooter Terror. What in the world's going on with these?
VHS trash is again like my homage to like the trashy B movies, and but not necessarily the slasher genre. It's more like creature feature, pretty much in that style. Like Death Commando is mostly like Strike Commando, the movie. I took a lot from that, and American Ninja threw it in there. Laundromat was just like this little creature feature about a laundromat that was possessed by some like creature underground. Sharpshooter Terror is probably my favorite out of that whole bunch right there.
It's when you mentioned Death Commando and American Ninja and things like that, it reminds me when I saw that title, I was thinking immediately of the Cannon films back in the 80s.
Yes, that's heavily influenced.
It's funny when you saw that logo come up on the screen, you knew exactly what you were gonna get.
Oh yeah, it's the best. Yeah, I just watched American Ninja 1 and 2 the other day.
Yeah, I mean those are great. I like everything Michael Dudikoff does. He's great.
Oh sure.
There's another series, I think maybe a trilogy, Chatter from the Tomb. The books are Nightweaver, Abominable Snowman, and Jungle Rot. What are those?
hmm Yeah, I was gonna merge those into VHS trash. I wrote those initially to be have a little bit more serious edge, but it didn't turn out so well because I liked writing in a trashy style. So I kind of messed up on that, and I haven't included any more into that. I meant to merge it, like I said, but I just haven't got around to it.
That makes sense. You've got the Splatter Madness, which I think these are novellas or maybe short stories.
Yeah, they're like novelettes, novellas. Rabid Madness. Is it the Tomb? Or no, it's not the Tomb. The Mound. Yeah, the Mound. There's a couple more in there. I'm actually about to release another one this week for it, Rabid Madness 2. Those are just basically pure extreme splatter books. That's all there is to it.
When I think of those kind of books, I think of Brian Smith and maybe sometimes maybe Brian Keene does a little bit of that too.
Yes,
Last one I want to bring up is I may not be getting this right. It's SRS Cinema LLC novelizations with books like Motorboat, She Kills Flesh Eaters.
those are movie novelizations from the company SRS and the film company. So I've taken several other movies and adapted them into books. I've also done it with Wild Eye Publishing. I've also done Commando Ninja with Benjamin Combs, and I've done the Barn novelization, which I'm working on the second one for this year. And there's a few more, like I worked with Brett McCormick, who did Abomination in 1986, I think it came out. And he also did Replicator. I don't know if you ever heard of that movie.
So are these movies, are they newer movies or are they like cult cinema?
They are newer movies. Uh, most of them are new.
Cool. All right. So yeah, I haven't watched any of those. I haven't heard any of those. Their titles and the way that you describe them reminds me of the old Asylum movies, but I don't know if they still make those.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's a good comparison.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Yeah, anytime you went to like back in the day, you went to Redbox or you were trying to scroll for something, Asylum would always come up. So if you're looking for like Alien, it would come up with Asylums like Alien Force or something, but it would look the same, so you would get kind of confused.
Yeah, yeah.
They're an amazing marketing team that did that. I don't even know if they're still around, but they were really cool.
I don't know. I see stuff still like that though. It's funny, like Predators instead of Predator or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. So getting into this recent event that everyone's been talking about, and I'm going to set the table real quick on what publisher we're discussing. The name is Encyclopocalypse Publications. They were founded by New York Times bestselling author Mark Miller, who also serves as the publisher's president. Miller became the assistant editor or editor for horror icon Clive Barker. Some of the roles that Miller's held over the last decade or so, he's had his hands in Clive Barker related properties like Hellraiser or writing Dark Horse comic titles to animated shorts and contributing to podcasts. So he's kind of got his hands in everything. He eventually started his own publishing company, which again is Encyclopocalypse Publications. Their mission statement, according to their website, quote, the archiving of the written word is one of the oldest and most important practices in human history. Encyclopocalypse was founded as a place where books can live on, from independent novels to literature published before the digital age. Our goal was to create a home for every great book that hasn't yet been heard. End quote. The publisher focuses on the same type of stuff we just talked about: cult cinema novelizations, original horror, sci fi, action adventure content. The company's even reprinted horror novels from the 80s and 90s, and even just recently published a book by Joe R. Lansdale. So Brian, how did you first come into contact with this publisher? What drew you to them in the very beginning?
It was after I released Snow Shark. And Sean DeRager, he came into my messages on Twitter and he's asked, "Hey, this is my kind of shit. I was wondering if maybe you'd like to do a audiobook." And I was like, "Well, I don't even know what to do with that." So yeah, I mean, we could talk about it. And so he got into that and we did an audiobook and that's how I got pulled into EP.
Okay, so you got pulled into that, and then I had read. I'm going way, maybe back to 2023 or early 2024. I remember finding you on Facebook and reading your comments about the movie Chopping Mall and how much you love that movie. Like I could tell your passion about that movie in the comments. So what originally drew you to the movie Chopping Mall? Like what makes you a big fan of that?
It was back like one of those memories back in the video rental store, and went to the horror aisle and saw that cover and it scared the shit out of me. It was that hand, in that bag and those eyes and eyes sticking out of the bag. And there was just something about that movie that scared me. And I rented it, I watched it, wasn't scared, but I loved it. And then from then on, I rented that thing almost every weekend and I just fell in love with it. And it's still a favorite of mine. And it just, yeah, it attached itself to me in every way.
Yeah, mine too. In case listeners don't know Chopping Mall, first off, shame on you for not knowing Chopping Mall. But if you don't know Chopping Mall, it was a 1986 film released by Roger Corman's Concord Pictures. The idea was, I think his wife came up with the idea of him coming up with a horror movie set in a shopping mall locale. They brought on Jim Wynorski and Steve Mitchell to direct, and eventually led to, I guess, the Cormans eventually created a partnership there, and they made Big Bad Mama 2, Deathstalker 2, the movies that you recently mentioned, Sorority House Massacre 2 and 3. Or actually, maybe you mentioned Slumber Party Massacre, but that's Sorority House Massacre. Anyway, these are cult cinema classics. But Chopping Mall is about a security robots that malfunction after a lightning storm. And these robots, they possess all types of crazy weapons, and they go on the prowl in a shopping mall overnight while the businesses are all closed. And unfortunately, a group of young men and women choose that night to throw a party in the, it's like in the furniture store, and it spills out into the mall. But then all hell breaks loose. So it's a great movie, and kind of Brian, it kind of reminds me of like when we got into like that little tiny era in the 80s where you had like Terminator and you had Runaway and even like Short Circuit. it's like technology turning against humans was kind of like the subgenre, I guess.
Oh yeah, there's tons of them too. I can't even think of them all, but I think there's one called Mindspeak, maybe something like that. Yeah, there's quite a bit of them. A lot of them are hidden, but there's some good ones out there actually.
To me, I think Chopping Ball is probably the best of the bunch.
Definitely.
So you obviously like the movie. Did they approach you about doing a novelization of the movie, or did you reach out to them and just pitch the idea?
Chandra Rager approached me, and he approached me for about a year, almost about 14 months ago. And he said, "Hey, I'm gonna get you Nail Gun Massacre." I was like, "Oh shit, I love that movie," you know. And I was like, "Okay," so got a contract for it. Never happened. And then he contacted me about a month later, and he said, "Hey, I got something really good for you. You're gonna love this." I was like, "What is it?" And then he's like, "What do you think about Chopping Mall?" And I was like, "You mean one of my favorite movies?" So yeah, I'm all over it. Like, let's do it. And then he's like, "All right, I need it done in 2 weeks. Can you do that?" I was like, "Yeah, I could do that." Gave him 35,000 uh, word manuscript in 2 weeks, and it didn't see the light of day for over a year. And then he said, uh, "Hey, now we're on our timetable, so I need you to pump it up. I need you to pump it up, you know." So I got it to like, I think it was like 45,000 or some shit, and then they cut it down to like 24,000 or something. I don't know. It was weird. It was weird.
So I found out about that novelization, I think in late summer of 2024. So you're saying that you wrote that book back in like 2023. It just wasn't published.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, what was the delay? Did they give you any reason why?
They said Shout just was taking their time.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Wasn't a priority for them or something like that.
Oh, okay, got it. All right. So we get up to late summer 2024. I think that the news gets out that that's actually going to be published. I think I reached out to Encyclopocalypse August or September, and they sent me the ebook of your novelization, which I read, loved, reviewed it on the Paperback Warrior blog back in October, and I liked what you did with your novelization because you added a couple little extra things to it that weren't in the movie. Do you want to tell listeners what you kind of added or what your idea was behind it?
Yeah, one of them was the horse scene, and that was a deleted scene that they wanted in the book. So I had like a little script to go by. There's no video of it or anything, so I just went with it, and I, I like that scene a lot. It was funny. There's like little minor things that I changed. I love writing about Dick Miller and that. That was such a fun scene. And then the very end, I don't, well, I guess I can spoil it now, but at the end, there was a whole different, like climax to the movie. It was like Protector, there was a new Protector. Like these Protector bots were actually, was a military project, you know, and they were there as a test phase essentially. And they got set off early, so it kind of screwed up their plans. And then out in this facility, a few hours from the mall or whatever, shit goes to hell. And there's a new protector out and about. You know, basically it broke out of its facility, killed a bunch of soldiers, and now it's out in the world about to do its own thing. And that's pretty much what I added to it. I thought it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I was surprised because I was, knowing the movie, I was thinking that's where it was going to end, but then you had that extra section of the book. I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's something else going on here, and so that was cool. I really liked that little twist on it. And when you said you were looking at like a script or something, did they provide you the script from the movie? Like, did Shout give that to you, or?
No, it was actually on the Blu-ray or on the special edition, and there's like a little section in there, and it was just little scene.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So, all right. So you write the novelization. It looks like everything is set for this book to come out. I think they put the pre-orders out on Amazon. In fact, you can still, and I guess in my internet, I have still have my cache in there, and I can still pull up your book showing in Amazon with your name on it. But yeah, they did pre-orders. Did the book actually hit store shelves, or was it pulled prior to even coming out?
I have messages that said Sean had it in stores, that they shipped a couple hundred copies to these stores, and that's all I know about that side.
Yeah. So there are physical editions that exist probably out there somewhere.
Oh yeah, Europe was still selling them. I think they still are actually my versions. I've had a lot of people send me messages. Hey, look what I got! I was like surprised.
I can only imagine how much those are going to be worth like in 20 years.
hmm
What I mean, what led to them? reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, we're pulling you. We're going to go in a different direction with the novelization, and we're going to sever ties with you." I mean, how did this happen?
Okay, this was the most confounding thing that ever happened to me in publishing. So this all came about with a private relationship of mine with a girl, and I broke up with this girl. There was a big breakup, me and her. So she comes up with this huge um, thing saying how I abused her and how I was this way and this way to her, and all these fabrications because she's so angry with me. And so she goes and tells Sean all this stuff. She sent him a huge email, and he sent that email to me so I could see all these essentially fabrications. They're lies. They're I don't want to like talk bad about her or anything, but she was twisting words and twisting scenarios to fit a certain, angle on it. And Sean told me, you know, he's all, I'm receiving a lot of things from a couple of women. They're saying that you abused one of them or whatever. And I was like, what? I don't even know what the hell's going on. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it. I have all these messages, from him. Like this one, I'll tell you right now. He says, well, I ain't slowing shit down. It's Brian Barry pedal to the metal. I don't make business decisions based on romantic squabbles and people's personal shit. And then he says, that's all this is relationship bullshit. It has no bearing on you as an author and storyteller. I'm sorry, dude. And then he says, I'm not going to bring any attention to it. But he does bring attention to it. And he just severed all ties with me with no word at all. And he went all over social media and he was smearing my name, saying a bunch of bad stuff about me that wasn't even true. And so I came out with this huge statement telling exactly what happened on Facebook. It was like 7,000 words. And that was the truth of it. And he still didn't want to see it. They didn't want to see it. So he just pulls it. He doesn't tell me anything. Mark sends me an email. Hey, consider this our severance of you. I was like, what does that mean? He said, we're pulling all your titles. We're pulling all of this because they were afraid of the fallout from this woman. And I don't understand that. I did not get that at all. And still confounds me today. Like I'm shaking because I don't understand it.
Going back to this, so they're just going off of word of mouth of an ex-girlfriend and maybe another acquaintance or ex-girlfriend. So they're just going off word of mouth. There's no, I mean, they're not going out and finding like police reports or any kind of domestic assault that's been filed in court or anything like that.
No police reports. Nothing happened at all.
So I'm just saying, like, if from your perspective, these women that you were involved with, you apparently abused them, that you did all these bad things, but they never went to the police or did anything like that. They never filed any reports.
Correct.
I guess in just a revenge kind of thing, or they just, whatever it is, animosity from the breakup or whatever. They say, hey, we're just going to ruin his little publication deal with this publisher, and we'll just reach out and let them know what's going on. I mean that,
Exactly.
yeah, it actually happened.
Hmm.
I mean, it seems like from your standpoint, I mean, you're yeah, a fairly established author. You've got tons of books. You're obviously a professional. You've got great artists involved in your work. You've got your own publishing company. It just seems like they would at least say, "Hey, is any of this stuff true?" You say it's not, and then they at least come to your defense. But it sounds like they were just ready to just wash their hands of it completely.
That's exactly what it was. The girl that I broke up with, she told me the day that I broke up, she said she hates me. She hopes I die, and that she's going to tell everyone, and she's going to ruin my career and take Chopping Mall away from me. That is exactly what she said. And then 3 months later, it happened.
What a weird what a weird thing. Like I was trying to think about, well, first off, I hadn't read any of your response. I saw that they had pulled you and then I went straight to X, contacted you and said, "Hey, can we do an interview? I want to hear your side of it." I haven't read anything, so everything you're saying to me is a surprise. I didn't know what the backstory was. The only thing I can think of that even remotely compares to this kind of situation, and I mean it's not even really close, but there was a novelization written by Michael Avallone. He was hired by Leisure to write the Friday the 13th Part 3 novelization, which was released around the time of the movie premiere in 1982. But for whatever reason, Signet hired an author named Simon Hawke, who had wrote the prior two novelizations of Friday the 13th and Friday the 13th Part 2, and they got him to write a new Part 3 novelization, but that was 6 years later. I mean, this was after Avallone's book already came out. We're talking 6 years later. They come up with their own novelization, which I never really understood why they did that in the first place. But that's the only thing I could really think of that would even compare to this situation where they just hire somebody else to write a novelization and just kind of kick you to the curb. That's the only thing I could think of. I can't think of any other situation where that happened.
Oh yeah, he attacked me on site. Like he didn't even talk to me. I was like really good friends with Sean, like very good friend. I considered him a best friend. I really did. And then he stopped talking to me. And then I had people like screen capturing because he blocked me on everything. I had people screen capping what he was saying about me, and it blew my mind. I could not believe it. Like I just lost my mind. I didn't know what to say about it. It just like Sean, you're making me out to be like some bad guy. And he would go on there saying how I was making T-shirts with Chopping Mall when it was just some algorithm on social media, but he captured that, put it on there, and he had people hating on me about making T-shirts that I was never making T-shirts of, and just little things like that. He would go around, oh, I'm getting tired of this Brian G. Barry guy. Like it just blew my mind. I was waiting forever for that. I did what they wanted me to do. I did it as fast as I could. I got it out there for him, and they bent to social pressure from these women. They were afraid. That's what it was, and that's what I've been hearing from a couple of reliable sources. I'm not going to spill them because they're pretty close, with him and whatever. But it just blows my mind. I have all these texts from him, where he's actually I'm really not trying to start any fires here or anything, but he is literally belittling the people that he's supporting. I could throw these out there, but I'm not going to do that. And it just blows my mind what he did. And he took it from me. He didn't say anything at all. He just disappeared.
And you don't have to mention any other authors, any other authors' names, but has any other authors from that from Encyclopocalypse reached out to you about it?
Yes.
Okay. And did they have your back on this, or do they feel like this?
Oh yeah, totally.
From here, do you have any recourse to get the book out to the public? Do you have any like legal right to the work? Can you do anything with it?
Um, Mark saw a Chopping Mall cover on my Instagram, and he sent me an email saying that he's threatening to sue me. He said, "You can't put out that book. You don't own the rights to it." And I was like, "I never said I was putting out that book. I said EP is not going to take away my dream." And he was, saying, "Oh, well, this is what it looks like or whatever." And I was like, "I don't care what it looks like. I'm not putting it out. I can't put it out." So I wrote Hacking Mall instead, which was my version. And I wrote it. It was like 46,000 words. I just put it out recently. But if people want like a copy of Chopping Mall, I have ARCs. They can have them because they want it. I'm gonna give it to them. Simple as that.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw Hacking Mall before I talked with you today. I saw it on your Amazon page. I was wondering if that was related in any way to Chopping Mall, but it sounds like you kind of did your own thing with it.
I did. Yeah, a lot. I was wondering if people are like, oh, he's probably you put it out under a different title or whatever and changed that. No, it's completely different. It's almost like a RoboCop Terminator Chopping Mall scenario.
Okay, yeah, I need to read that. Well, Encyclopocalypse, they hire Joshua Millican, who I'm not familiar with, to write Chopping Mall, a new novelization of Chopping Mall, and they gave him, I think, 2 weeks to do it. I'm not familiar with this author. Did this author reach out to you in any way? Like,
No, no, he didn't. But I have a feeling that that book was half written by Mark because that's what Sean told me would happen if something ever happened, like he had to hurry up, then Mark would probably write half of it or whatever.
okay. Do you fault Millican for accepting the job of writing it?
Not at all, not at all. I have nothing against him.
You have any interest in reading his version?
No, I don't because it's a sore topic for me, so I probably won't.
Right, yeah. I know there's like bands like Judas Priest comes to mind. Judas Priest, their singer Rob Halford, he says he'll never go and listen to the studio albums that he didn't sing on because he says it's like like listening or watching your girlfriend with somebody else prior to you, and he says you just can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
So you've turned the page on this, you've turned the corner on it, you put it behind you, you just power on. So what's next for you? What have you got planned as a writer for 2025?
Oh, a lot. I'm about to release one this week. I want to continue with my series. Um, Start a new series. I have a couple of really cool projects that are very die-hard canon like, and I'm just gonna keep going on putting out stuff I put out. I'm gonna start one that's gonna be a bigger book of mine and probably release at the end of the year because I want to take my time with it. and really, put it out there. But pretty much just carrying on, carrying on. I'm gonna put out more stuff with Slaughterhouse. Got more anthologies planned, and publishing a couple authors.
Yeah, so obviously it seems like you're a full-time writer. Are you able to do this as your career, or do you still have to supplement it in some way with another job?
Um, as of now, I'm still able to do it as a career.
That's awesome. I love it.
Very great.
That's great. What do you have on tap for your publisher, Slaughterhouse Press?
Right now, I have a military anthology that I want to put out. I mean, I started out with a video game one, a Christmas one, and the 80s action, and the sword and sorcery. I always want to do something different, even though military's been done a bit, but I love military horror, so I wanted to see what people could send me. And I'm gonna have a sports one. I'll have a few different ones out there this year for sure.
That's it's fascinating. You've got quite the mind working all the time. It sounds like you've always got ideas going.
Oh yeah.
So, do you take any submissions for your Slaughterhouse Press? And if so, how can writers get in touch with you about submitting their manuscripts?
I don't take like novels or novellas or anything like that. Right now, I'm just focusing on anthologies, unless you're invited as an author. Like I invited David Irons, and he put out Deaf and Dumb Danny Does Christmas, but it didn't come out for Slaughterhouse Press because of the whole situation, and people are afraid of certain things and everything. I won't get into that, but um, he uh, he released that. That was gonna be a Slaughterhouse one. I have a couple other authors that have their manuscripts, and I'm gonna put them out later this year. I'm very very excited about them too.
Has this situation with Encyclopocalypse helped your career, you think, that sell more books, or you think it's hurt it?
I At first I was wondering because the dreaded cancel culture thing. I was like, okay, well I guess I'm screwed. But nothing changed, nothing. And I've actually sold more. I've noticed over the past few months.
All right. Well, Brian, thanks a lot for your time today. I know this was a sensitive subject, and I do appreciate all your candor and patience today. And I wish you the best of luck in the future. And I want you to stay in touch with Paperback Warrior. Send us what you have, and we'll review it and get it out there.
Sure, man. I appreciate that chopping mall review, by the way. I loved that review so much. That really lifted me up. So I appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. Glad we could help out.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.